if you have, I think it was over 740, and I don't know who briefed him on this because he doesn't know. He doesn't know credit scores. He doesn't understand the middle class. He's not, Scranton Joe like he says he is. But I think anybody over the credit score of a 740, which is just middle class, or not even really. I mean, I don't understand where they got that number because the 740 is not that high. I mean, it's high, but it's not as high as, it's not like the elitist. It's not the elitist class. That is straight up the middle class, maybe even lower middle class. California utilities want to charge customers based on how much money they make. Yes. So if you don't make a whole lot of money, then you're going to have a cheaper utility bill. This is socialism. Student loan forgiveness punishes those who paid off their debt. Democrats punish success and reward deadbeats. It's just true. They're going to subsidize riskier mortgages. It's going to come out of your pocket. They're going to charge you if you have a credit score over 740. What's that all about? 309-451-9299. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz. You can always text in or call in. Show here is 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Every morning, Monday through Friday. Right after me, it's Glenn Beck, Dan Bongino, Sean Hannity. Then we've also got Mark Levin, Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins at 7:35 today. Scott Robbins from Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins joins me Monday through Friday. Now, first, let's turn our attention back to the Nashville shooting this morning because there's new stuff that is coming out about this. As the nation awaits to see this Tranifesto, the manifesto from the transgender shooter nut, Audrey Hale, after her targeting of the Covenant Christian School and murder of 6 innocent people. I want to talk about that. I want to turn our attention there because there's new information about this Tranifesto, and it's important. Next, I'm going to comment on the New York hotels, and I think that this is going on, maybe not to the scale of New York City, but Chicago. I know they are putting immigrants up into hotels, possibly here in Bloomington Normal. I have no idea. I've got to do some digging here, but I wouldn't doubt that the state of Illinois is doing the same thing that New York City is doing right now. Hotels are being turned into migrant housing. And how is that going to affect you as an American? How is it going to affect you? How is that going to affect you if it is happening here in our state? If it's happening in the city of Chicago? If they're shipping here to Bloomington, if they are shipping illegal immigrants here to Bloomington Normal and housing them in hotels? How is that going to affect you later? Here's one that won't make the national news. You won't hear it anywhere. Black pastors and churchgoers this weekend marched in Chicago in protest against the violence that's occurred in this city, in the Chicago last week. So remember last week we had 2 children shot. We had damage, property damage, people jumping on top of cars. There was a Chicago couple. They were just walking, trying to find something to eat, a bite, and they were jumped by a big group of black men and women, and not even men and teens. I say teen. It was a teen attack. It was teen terrorism in Chicago over the last week. And this weekend, now we've got over 500. Just put that into perspective here, folks. 500. My graduating class in high school was 400 kids. We had 500 black men, it was mainly men, pastors, churchgoers, marching in Chicago this weekend to protest the violence that's happening. All right, all this and more ahead on the Morning Buzz. And folks, I am live in the studio. If you want to check it out, I'm there. You can comment, subscribe, share the video out. And let's play the Tranifesto. Here we go.
At 10:13, police say 28-year-old Audrey Hale shot their way into Covenant Presbyterian School, took 6 lives, 3 children, 3 adults, shot at police vehicles from a second-story window, then was killed by officers. Police say the shooting was carefully planned.
We have some writings that we're going over that pertain to this day, the actual incident. We have a map drawn out of how this was all going to take place. There's right now a theory of that we may be able to talk about later, but it's not confirmed.
And folks, I'm going to share with you this story coming out now about the Tran Manifesto, Audrey Hill, the Tranifesto, as I call it. So the Tranifesto, here we go. We've got now this member of Congress. So the leaks have started with the Tranifesto. The leaks have started. You have a member of Congress right now. His name is Representative Tim Burchett, who admittedly, he just admits here that the FBI is behind the delaying of the manifesto. They're probably stalling because they're still writing it. No, I'm kidding, guys. That's a joke. It's funny. Okay, chill out. I know the leftists are screwed. You conspiracy theorists, chill. It's a joke. The FBI is still writing it. That's why it's taking so. No, I'm kidding. The FBI is doing everything they can, though, to prevent this from coming out, this manifesto. The reason being is that they don't want this getting out. Keep in mind, we got a readout, at least, of this 13-page manifesto from the Louisville shooter. And you remember, he's this left-wing Redditor. He's on Reddit. He's posting things like anti-Trump. He's posting things about climate change. He's posting all of these things on Reddit. Now, Reddit found out about his left-wing posts, and they suspended his account after conservative media pointed out that this guy was a left-winger. The Louisville shooter, and this matters because the Louisville shooter he shot everybody up because he did it for political reasons. The Louisville shooter, he said one of the main reasons he went into the bank and shot everyone up was because he had an anti-gun motive. So therefore, it's political. And I bring up the fact that he's a left-winger because the motive here is that he was anti-gun. And logic here, it's deranged, it's irrational, it doesn't make sense. But understand, the actions to this Louisville shooter, Connor is, I think, his name. I don't know. I really don't like saying the names of these shooters because I don't want to vilify, or I don't want to prop them up as some sort of hero. But the actions that they do make sense to them. It might not make sense to us. Well, how in the world an anti-gun narrative? He was trying to show that, it's easy for somebody as mentally unstable as him to get a gun. And it doesn't make sense, right? We understand that people kill people, guns don't kill people. You can look at a gun all day and say, go kill somebody, and it won't get up and actually go do it. It's people who kill people. Guns don't kill people. We understand that logic. They don't, and these mass shooters don't understand. But it makes sense to them. They think they're doing the right thing. They want a revolution. They think they're martyrs for their cause. And we're starting to see this rise. And when they say that people on the right are causing political violence or that they're violent, and, we've got AOC a little bit later, she's trying to say, Tucker Carlson being on the air is going to destroy democracy and that it's an incitement of violence. When you talk about violence, this is real. We have left-wing nut jobs rising up because they want a revolution and they think that they're martyrs for their cause. So that was the Louisville shooter. In this case, I want to talk about Nashville. Audrey Hill. What did she do? Well, she targeted Christian children. Christian children are being targeted by trans militants and they're being executed. You live in a country where that happened, folks. And not only do you live in a country where that happened, but you live in a country where the president of the United States said, after that happened, he said that we need to make sure that the trans community is okay through this. Do we remember President Joe Biden coming out and saying, I stand with the Christian community? No, of course he didn't. Not one tweet from the devoted, this devoted Catholic It's a friend-enemy distinction. That is the point of the movie we are in, folks. If you are a friend of the regime, you will never be held accountable. From the Post-Millennial this morning, Metro Nashville council member Courtney Johnston stated that according to her sources, the document, she's talking about the Manifesto, is a blueprint on total destruction, adding, quote, "It was so detailed at the level of what Hill had planned." And she cautioned, this council member cautioned anyone against releasing it to the world, noting that while some parts should be made available, the document in its entirety in the wrong person's hands would be astronomically dangerous. Let's talk about that. Astronomically dangerous. I think it should be released. Full stop. I think it should be released. We should have that information so that way we can prevent things like that. So that way we can improve our security. I'm going to get into this here. We know from a tactical perspective that there was details planned out to attack this school. One of the reasons why Audrey Hale attacked this school wasn't just because it was a Christian school and she hated Christians and she was trying to be a part of this revolution. And that wasn't the only reason. The other reason we now know is that she knew that this school was not armed. They didn't have armed security guards. They didn't have resource officers, and that they were armed, right? She knew it had weak security, and she laid out the physical security details of the school, and we already know the security details of the school. We already know that from the body cam footage. So if they were to release this manifesto, it's not like they're going to be giving up all of these different security details and private information or, a blueprint on how to get into this school. It's because we already know. We've seen the body cam footage from all of the officers. I think that the police in Nashville were very transparent with the exception of the Manifesto not being released. That's not on them. It's in the FBI's hands. I think that cops did great. They were very transparent. We saw a lot of the school cam footage, the cameras in the school. We saw the body cam footage. We need to see the Manifesto. You're going to tell me it's astronomically dangerous? We already know the layout of the school. Number two, all of that information is dated. At least it should be. The security features of the school, it should be changed, improved. We still don't know if the Covenant Church is going to be moving out of that location. They might be. So I don't understand why they won't release this manifesto. She wanted to kill Christians, and she viewed natural order, moral order as something that must be eradicated. That is what was in her head, and we need to understand what was going through her head in order to prevent this sort of thing, and in order for the Christian community to understand what kind of threat we're dealing with here. Also, other Christian schools, right? They need to improve their security. They need to maybe call Beacon Training, right? Beacon Training, they are a recent advertiser, and they are a training group where you can call if you are worried about the training feature or the security features at your place of business or at your job or at your school. You can call your school board members. You can have a conversation with your boss. Hey, boss, how do we change this? How do we actually have good training so that way we're not sitting ducks when this kind of stuff happens? She was doing this, Audrey Hale was doing this in response to a law that Tennessee lawmakers created, and her message was very clear. You kill our kids, we kill yours. And this was an attack on the Christian community, and the Christian community needs that manifesto to understand what kind of threat we're dealing with here. 309-451-9299. You can always text in. Folks, a little bit later in the show, I'm going to be talking about AOC. I kind of mentioned it before, but AOC, she had a little interview on the Talking Head show, right? MSNBC with Jen Psaki. So this New York Congresswoman, AOC, she spoke with Jen Psaki, and it was just so absurd. It was just weird. It was very weird. AOC literally calling for Joe Biden and the government to get involved and knock Tucker Carlson off of the air because she's afraid that this most top-rated host in all of cable news, in all of cable, I mean, he's the most watched show in all of cable. This top-rated host is, quote, inciting violence. And then AOC is now calling for the government regulations that would remove Carlson and others she disagrees with from air. 309-451-9299. You can also see me live in the studio. Hey, good morning from the city's 92.9 studios. Hey. So do appreciate you joining in. Colson, good morning. This is Kat Peterson with Talking Points of the Right, as well as right-wing propaganda that you won't want to pass off, or that you want to pass off as the truth. Oh boy, Christians aren't under threat, Kat. That's why there's separation of church. Colson, I just laid out for you the receipts here, man, where Christians are under attack. She went to the school. Audrey Hale, this transgender militant, went to the school and she took the life of Christians because she didn't like their religious beliefs and she didn't like moral order. That is an attack on Christians. They were martyred. These Christians were martyrs. And I don't know what you're talking about, right-wing propaganda. It's not right-wing propaganda. I laid out the receipts for you. I have the receipts, right? There is a manifesto. Some of it has been leaked. And the police themselves have come out and said that she had a motive of killing Christians. So what are you talking about? Christians aren't under threat. We saw one of a Christian school get shot up by a trans militant. There is a manifesto that details out why she did it. And we should have that. We should have all of it. We have some of it, not all of it. But good morning, Colson. I appreciate you listening every day. Now, a little bit later, we are going to get into this black pastors and churchgoers. They're marching in Chicago. This isn't going to get national news. You won't hear about it really from anybody. They're protesting against the violence that happened last week. So not this past weekend, but last weekend, where teenagers were attacking innocent people, just walking around Chicago, downtown, trying to get a bite to eat. They jumped the Chicago couple. I did that story a week ago, where they were just walking, and this crowd of young black men, mainly, maybe a couple of females, black females, jumped this interracial couple, actually white and black man, white woman. They were beating on this white woman and this man, and I thank God they came out with their life, right? So we're going to talk about that. We've got so much and more ahead, but be sure to like and follow and share this video out with your normie friends, with friends that, don't get to hear this information. I'm not referring to the Tennessee shooting. It's unfortunate it happened, but it seems you're trying to spin it as the LGBTQ community are the threat, in which they are not. I'm going to choose my words carefully here. I don't think that the LGBT people who have the different sexual orientations, right? I don't think that they are a threat to the community. I think that there are militants that are left-wing, and I'm lumping them all together here. The Louisville shooter was a known left-wing activist who did this for political reasons. There is a rise in not only these trans activists, but BLM activists, anti-gun activists, and what's the common denominator there? It's left-wing. So I will say left-wing militants, people who have ideologies like the LGBTQ community should be protected, the LGBTQ community is under attack, people who think that the LGBTQ community is oppressed in some sort of way. Those people are dangerous in that they might hold the ideology that they want to start a revolution to protect the LGBTQ community. They truly do, these deranged people on the left wing. You don't see this, right? And I've asked you multiple times, Colson, where is the Trumper who goes in and shoots up people in the name of Donald Trump and in the name of right-wing causes? Where? If you can give me one, maybe even, okay, let's do 3. If you can provide me 3 times where a right-wing activist went into a school and shot it up in the last 20 years, I will say that I shouldn't be inferring. I'm not denying that there's left-wing violence. Also, maybe I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. Colson, sir, I'm trying to show you that there are receipts that there's left-wing violence. So what you're saying, I don't understand talking, or you're saying that Christians aren't under threat. They are under threat. You just admitted that there is left-wing violence, people who hold the ideology that Christians are bad, LGBTQ people are oppressed, people who hold that ideology. What do you mean that Christians aren't under threat? You just admitted that there is left-wing violence. And if there's a rise in left-wing militants going into schools, shooting them up, going into banks, shooting them up, if there's a rise in that, then Christians are in fact under threat because that goes contrary to their ideology. All right, I got to get back on air. This is fun, though. Thanks for commenting. I appreciate it. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz. And I know you're freaking out. Yes, this is true. I had a lot of people texting me over the weekend. They were like, wait, so if I have a credit score over 740, and folks, I'm not middle class. I'm just going to say it. I don't think that I'm technically middle class. I'm very young. I haven't really gotten a house, haven't really gotten my feet wet. And as far as the economy goes, I would say lower middle class, right? Grew up definitely lower middle class, like a lot of Americans. And I've got a credit score that is over 740. Most people do have, or something close to that. I've worked very hard for that. And Biden is going to start to charge you, if you've got high credit scores, borrowers' fees. So they're going to charge them fees. So if you borrow money and you've got a higher credit score than 740, or if you have a 740, which is a lot of Americans, folks, that's like lower middle class to middle class. That is like a good chunk of us. They're going to charge you fees next time you go to borrow money from the bank in order to subsidize riskier mortgages. I also want to point this out. California, they're now charging, or California utilities want to charge customers based on how much they make. How is that fair? The guy who makes less money than me is still using the same amount of electricity, so he should pay the same rate I do. That's not fair. And they're all about, fairness. Come on. Student loan forgiveness punishes those who paid off their debt. Democrats, they want to punish success and reward deadbeats. That's what's going on here. 309-451-9299. You can text into the show. You can also see me live in the studio on YouTube Live or on Facebook Live. We're there. Now, wanted to get into this. Did you guys know it's National Scream Day? Sometimes you just need to scream, let it out. Sometimes I just want to scream about the liberals. No, I'm okay. I'm okay. But yeah, sometimes you just need to let it scream out. Also, today's Pigs in a Blanket Day. I'm not really good at making pigs in a blanket. I get the croissants and then I wrap the croissants around the mini hot dogs. I think that's how you would make pigs in a blanket. Sometimes maybe it's called something different if you put it in a pancake. Not too sure, but it's Pigs in a Blanket Day, a good day for a little hot dog wrapped in some dough. Also, I came across this. Life is like a huge box of chocolates. Russell Stouffer, the candy maker known for its boxes of chocolates that you get sometimes at Christmas, Valentine's Day, is celebrating its 100th anniversary in a big way with really big boxes of chocolate. Really big. So the company has created the world's largest box of chocolates ever, and it weighs over 5,000 pounds. That's enough to earn the Guinness World Record. So each piece of candy weighs about 11 to 38 pounds. So that has got to be pretty big. There's a whole lot of nougat and that weird pink filling that nobody really likes. That's a whole lot of that stuff. I'm not really into the pink filling. I don't know what it is. Is it strawberry? Is it raspberry? I don't know. I like chocolates. I do like the turtles. The turtles are pretty good. But the box measures more than 30 feet wide and 15 feet tall, and it was unveiled last week in Kansas City. It's a little interesting tidbit for you. There's the world's largest box of chocolates being made by Russell Stouffer in order to celebrate their 100th anniversary in a big way. My question is, how many big boxes are they going to make? 5,000 pounds of chocolate, the Russell Stouffer employees will be making these big boxes of chocolate for their entire lives. This is a huge box of chocolates, huge. 309-451-9299. We're going to be back on the other side. I want to discuss a little bit more about AOC and how she says that Tucker Carlson is inciting violence. She's a nut. She just says that people are inciting violence if they say something she doesn't agree with. It's just a hook, line, and sinker for the Democrats, man. Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. I've got so much to talk about this morning. Coming up a little bit later. And this is a story that you won't want to miss. Okay. The former head of the CIA was behind the censoring of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Okay, Kat, we kind of already knew that, but now CBS is reporting this. So I've got new information coming out about the CIA's involvement of the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. And folks, CBS is now reporting on this story, and I think that this could be an attempt to try to get Joe Biden to not run in 2024. When the regime media starts reporting on something, and this is something that you should just remember. Write this down if you've got to. Kat said this. It's not about what they're reporting. It's about who's reporting it at a certain time. That's what it's all about, folks. And why is CBS starting to report on the Hunter Biden laptop story and the CIA's involvement of the cover-up of that story, the censorship of that story? I'm going to get into that here coming up in just a little bit. Now, I want to talk about AOC. AOC. I've got a few stories here that I'm going to get to. First, I'm going to talk about this Chicago weekend protest. This is not going to make national news. Don't expect to see this. Chicago black pastors and churchgoers, mainly men, 500 men, marched in Chicago to protest against the violence that occurred in the city last weekend. So not this past weekend, but last weekend there was a teen takeover, black teens, looting, rioting, jumping on top of cars, going after innocent bystanders in downtown Chicago, right there on Michigan Avenue. I used to go there all the time. I used to go and go shop in downtown, take the train, go to Navy Pier, do all the fun stuff there in Chicago. And now it's being taken over by these teens who are completely just out of their mind. And these Chicago pastors, black pastors, churchgoers, are saying enough is enough. We are going to do something about this. We're going to do something about this. So I'm going to talk about that here. But first, let's talk about AOC. And all these people are straight up grifters, I'm telling you. And I've got a story here coming up about these migrants, illegal immigrants. They are going into New York. The New York Post has the story, and I thought the story was a joke. 3 more hotel sites in Queens are being used as sanctuary shelters to help house the seemingly never-ending flood of the southern border illegal immigrants into New York City. These people are illegal. They are not going through any kind of process, and it's a straight up racket. It is grifting. These people are taking taxpayer money to fund this kind of stuff. And I'm going to get into it here a little bit later. AOC. Now, I saw this and it's pretty par for the course for AOC. She's targeting Tucker Carlson here. Let's just take a listen to her. She was on with Jen Psaki's MSNBC. And Democrats, they constantly talk about how much they want to protect democracy. It's so important that we protect democracy. Every single thing that the left doesn't like, they describe it as a threat to democratic governance. If they don't agree with it, if they don't like it, then all of a sudden it's a threat to democracy. When you take a step back, though, it seems obvious who the real threat is. AOC, this is a true threat to democracy. This is an attack on the First Amendment. AOC, she illustrated that perfectly. She is the true, real threat in this interview that aired on Sunday, yesterday. MSNBC, I came across it. Jen Psaki, and there's just so much absurdity. Just the fact that we have a former press secretary on MSNBC trying to cosplay as an unbiased journalist is absurd in and of itself. She's one of the biggest political hacks that has ever existed. But the conversation with Jen Psaki and AOC, it's moved into this territory where they start to say that Tucker Carlson poses a danger to the general public. And AOC accused accuses Tucker Carlson, this top-rated host in all of cable TV, most ratings. He is a top-rated TV host. And she called for the government to regulate Tucker Carlson, and she wanted him to be removed. That is a threat to democracy, folks. So let's take a listen here. Here we go.
Regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
So when she and Jen Psaki get up there and they are telling you that people like Tucker Carlson, people on the right, people on Fox News, people who are conservative are inciting violence, what does that do? Well, it equips these crazy Trantifa BLM left-wing activists like Connor Sturgeon of Louisville, who went into a bank and shot up his colleagues. Then you've got Audrey Hill, the transgender militant who went into a Christian school and shot up Christian children because she didn't like their moral stance on things. What do you mean? You're the one who's inciting violence right now with Jen Psaki in that interview. You almost have to respect how blatantly authoritarian that statement is. Many in the Democrat Party at least try to cover up their tyrannical instincts by beating around the bush, but AOC just comes out and owns up to her fascism, I guess. I suppose that's easy to do when she knows whatever media figure is sitting across from her is simply going to lavish her with praise and adoration. She's like, oh, AOC, I just love you. Mwah, 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 mwah. Psaki's performance in this interview is just totally pathetic. And if modern journalistic ethics actually existed, she'd be laughed out of her job. A follow-up question Psaki could have asked was, what incitement to violence? What are you talking about? You say it incites violence. Give me examples. Provide me receipts. I just provided you 2 receipts there. There's countless others. The Colorado shooter. He was a gay man, right? A gay LGBTQ activist, right? There's all kinds of different receipts I provide on this show for you to make statements that the Trantifa BLM left-wing activism is becoming militant. That is a statement I've said, and I provided you receipts with that statement. To back that statement up as a journalist, Psaki could have said, can you provide me specific examples? How are Democrats not responsible for incitement to violence given the last 2 high-profile mass shooters? Both were motivated by left-wing rhetoric on transgenderism and guns. These last 2 high-profile mass shooters were left-wing activists who were motivated by rhetoric on transgenderism and guns. Of course, MSNBC's newest star didn't bother to dig deeper because she's too busy slamming her chin to her chest in jubilant agreement with tyrannical calls to censor her competition by way of government force. She wants to censor her competition, wants to censor her political opponents. I gotta stop. I gotta move on, folks, because I'm getting hot. I'm angry about this one. 309-451-9299. Bud Light finally took some action this past week after this disastrous hit that they brought upon themselves. They hired this transgender personality, Dylan Mulvaney, who claims to be transgender, also claims to be a little girl, which is just deranged. But finally, they had, I would imagine, I think that she took it unwillingly, but I don't know that for sure. But they announced that the Bud Light vice president of marketing, who was behind the decision to get Dylan Mulvaney into that spokespersonship, the person behind the decision to bring Dylan Mulvaney on, she is taking a leave of absence, and she was replaced. But get this, there's more. That happened over the weekend, right there on a Friday. I think it was on Friday it happened, but there's more. Now the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Alyssa's boss, so this is the vice president of marketing, Alyssa Heinerscheid. I think I'm saying that right. Alyssa's boss, Daniel Blake, has also taken a leave of absence. So we are winning in this whole embargo, I guess, or boycott of Bud Light. So they are hearing you, and they have made decisions to put people on leaves of absence. I think that this leave of absence for Alyssa Heinerschied, who was behind Dylan Mulvaney being the spokesperson, and she was behind getting him that deal. She is going to take a pretty long leave of absence because they've already replaced her with Budweiser Global Marketing Vice President Todd Allen. So I'll be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Colson, my man, my man. Come on. No, that is not what I was asking you to do. You are providing me AP fact checks about the transgender shooter. I am not looking for fact checks about the shooter in Nashville. This is trans non-binary shooter. I think fact check. I that's not what I'm asking you to do, man. You're still not providing me receipts. What you have to do is give me an example of right wing militants, people who are going into places, shooting places up on behalf of right wing causes. If you can provide me at least three people who have done that in the last 20 years, I will concede this argument to you, my friend. Okay, so please, please, please provide me receipts of right wing people who have, in fact, gone into schools, gone into banks, and shot up people in the name of their right wing causes. Please do that. Um, and have killed people. Let's go take it a step. Have killed people, because I know that people on the left will say that the insurrection January 6th was right wing terrorism, and that was violence in and of itself. Nobody was killed except Ashley Babbitt, who was a right winger herself, by Capitol Police. So yeah, nobody was killed by a right winger in the name of right wing causes on January 6th. Um, yeah. So if you can provide me receipts, that would be great. Yeah. Thanks, Derek. I know. I know. It's so hard. It's tough, but you've got to try, right? I mean, I'm just trying to wake up these people in real time. Like you have to show me, in order for you to say that there's right wing terrorism or that there is right threats to the left from right wing folks. Um, then you have to provide me receipts and you have to show me who and where and why these people are going in and shooting people up. And the only common denominator I see is that these are left wing activists in the name of left wing causes, whether that be transgenderism, whether that be guns, anti gun narratives. I like what you have to say here, Pat. Right wing folks have jobs and they don't have time for that. Exactly. We don't have time to be activists, right? That's bottom line. Because Democrats, and always remember this, Democrats, politics is their life. Republicans, typically people who are on the right, do life, and politics is like a sidebar. Politics is something that they do on the side. Democrats live, breathe, and eat politics. You want to know why? Because it's a religion to them. Their politics is a religion to them. And it only makes sense because Democrats rely on these policies to live. Because if they didn't have these policies in place, then they wouldn't be able to exist because they rely so heavily on the government. The reason why people on the right don't need the government and don't really necessarily get involved in politics because they don't live for politics, because they don't need it. They live for themselves. They live for their families. Me personally, right? I'm very honest about my faith. I live for God. I live for Jesus. Um, I live I live for Him, and that's the God I serve, right? I don't serve politics. I don't serve that ideology. Thanks so much for commenting. We're going to be back here in just a little bit. Wow! Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. You can text in at 309-451-9299. You can also see me live in the studio, and I can interact with you. You can interact with me by commenting on the video. We're on YouTube Live and on Facebook Live. You can also find us on Twitter. Just type in Cities 92.9. You should be able to find us. It's not too hard as of yet. We haven't gone through the whole YouTube censorship. But speaking of censorship, I've got new information coming out now. The CIA was involved in the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Folks, now we've got CBS reporting on this story. This is an attempt, and I believe this, to try to get Biden to not run in 2024. This is interesting because now we've got CBS reporting on this. It was like some sort of hearing that took place, and under oath, we've got the former CIA chief, Mike Morrell, testifying under oath that the Biden campaign and Tony Blinken asked him to orchestrate a letter from 50 intel officials falsely claiming that the Hunter Biden emails were, quote, Russian disinformation. So the false claim that the laptop was Russian disinformation was repeated ad nauseum by Biden allies, by people on MSNBC, by people on CNN, by CBS probably themselves. It all led to censorship. They said it was Russian disinformation. People on Twitter censored the story. We know that, but it turns out that the former CIA chief was told, you better write this letter, and you send this letter out to people like Twitter, to people on Facebook, to Mark Zuckerberg. So I'm going to be talking about that story. Also, in Chicago this weekend, there was a march, a very peaceful march of about 500 black men. This is just such a heartwarming story. It should warm your heart. It won't make national news because, it doesn't bleed. If it bleeds, it leads, right? So there's black pastors, churchgoers. They're marching in Chicago to protest the violence that occurred last week where there was this teen takeover. 2 children, they were shot. There was a Chicago couple that was brutalized and beat up for just simply being innocent bystanders. They were just bystanders. There were teens jumping on top of cop cars, vehicles, property damage. They were protesting, I don't know, the oppression of black people in America. I don't understand it. Well, these black pastors and churchgoers, they've said enough is enough. We are marching. And I'm going to get into that story here on the other side. 309-451-9299. So remember when the left acted like they actually cared about immigrant children? Yeah, I remember that. Well, thanks to Biden's open border, the DHS can't locate 85,000 immigrant children inside the United States. Nice. Where's the wall-to-wall news coverage? Where is the outrage? Where is the fake crying photo ops of AOC? I thought you cared about immigrant children. Well, it turns out the DHS, they can't locate 85,000 of them inside the United States today. That brings me to this story I wanted to get through. Turns out that New York, in New York City, hotels are being turned into illegal immigrant housing. And how is that going to affect you, the American? We're going to get into it. And also, here's one that won't make national news networks. Black pastors and churchgoers, they marched in Chicago to protest against the violence that's occurred in that city. So we're going to get into it here on the Morning Buzz. And you guys can text in. You can also see me live in the studio. And this is the Morning Buzz. So let's get into it. The New York City illegal immigrant hotels. Right now, they're housing so many. I'm going to dig into the numbers here because the numbers are important. Here we go.
A peaceful stretch of Northern Boulevard here in Bayside, Queens, and New York City Council member Vicky Palladino meeting with a couple of her newest residents. But they won't be living in houses or apartments here. Instead, this hotel, the Anchor Inn. It's one of 3 in Queens, suddenly receiving hundreds more migrants at a hefty cost. Palladino says the owner of this hotel will be making $300,000 per month.
It's a cash machine. So they literally go from $0 to becoming multimillionaires overnight on your tax dollar and mine.
The national government has turned its back on New York City.
Mayor Eric Adams more adamant than ever today about the astronomical price tag of the crisis here in the city. $4.2 billion to date.
So that is the New York Post has the story here, and I was reading it. I thought it was a joke. I honestly thought, and then I was like, wait a second, it's April 24th. It's not April 1st. It's not April Fool's Day. So, yeah, this is real. 3 more hotel sites in Queens are being used as sanctuary shelters to help house the seemingly never-ending flood of southern border illegal immigrants into New York City. So they are using hotels now to house illegal immigrants. Excuse me? Get this. The city's Department of Homeless Services has awarded a total of nearly $17 million in new contracts to 2 social service providers, quote, social service providers, to manage a pair of new illegal immigrant shelters, new migrant shelters. One at the former Ramada Windham in Jamaica, New York. There's another one at the Marriott Courtyard, and there's one at LaGuardia Airport. So there's lots of shelters popping up here. There's some in hotels. There's one at the LaGuardia Airport. These are new contracts for 2 social service providers to manage a pair of new illegal migrant shelters. So meanwhile, we have the Queens City Councilwoman, Vicky Palladino, and she said that she received, quote, less than 8 hours notice from local officials that the Anchor Inn on Northern Boulevard on the Bayside in her district, so there's a hotel there, an inn in her district, and that it was going to be converted into an emergency migrant shelter. So they're changing all of these hotels into illegal immigrant shelters. The cost of the contract was not immediately known. However, we've got Eric Adams, and he's saying the city is going to be, this is on the city's tab, the city is going to be eating these costs for the housing and for the care of this avalanche of illegal immigrants flooding into the Big Apple since spring of 2022. This has been going on. Spring of 2022, it's been a year. And he said that could cost them their $4.3 billion by the end of 2024. So $4.3 billion, that's what's coming out of the city's pocket, the city budget, right, for these illegal immigrants in these hotels. $4.3 billion not being spent on crime, to deter crime, to punish crime, not being spent on the homeless in New York. So there's actual New Yorkers who are homeless, and this money is not being spent on them. This is being spent on foreigners, illegal immigrants, to go live in these airports, LaGuardia Airport. There's the Marriott Courtyard there, Ramada Windham. These are hotels in New York. And that's what the money's being spent on. They're not going through the immigration process, these illegal immigrants. It's not going to be going towards the infrastructure of the airport. They're not going to be putting money into the construction of revitalizing the airport. No. How could New York City become a place like this? As of April 2016, or of April 16th of this year, 2023. So April 16th as of this year. So that was just a couple of weeks ago. As of April 16th, more than 55,000 people illegally crossed the U.S.-Mexico border and have now gone into New York City. So let's understand that. 55,000 people crossed the U.S.-Mexico border into New York City. That's not counting all of the other cities. That's not counting the illegal immigrants who are being shipped into Chicago, shipped into California, shipped into all places throughout the nation. Also, we have in New York 34,000 people currently being cared for in New York. So that's on top of the current 34,000 people that that are being taken care of in these hotels, in these emergency shelters. Now, how many emergency shelters are there in the state of New York? There's now 103 emergency shelters, and then another 8 humanitarian emergency response and relief centers. So altogether, really, it's 111 different shelters for just illegal immigrants. AOC, she completely supports this. She got onto Twitter and she was crying about the blue check mark, right? She's like, all joking aside, this is like really setting the stage for major potential harm, like when disaster hits, because nobody's going to understand what agencies and what ones are legitimate if they don't have a blue check mark by their name. Pay the $8, AOC, and shut up. $8 for the blue check mark on Twitter. It's a Twitter Blue is what it's called. And you get all kinds of extra perks with it. But the liberals, they're melting down and they're like, there's actually like a potential harm that comes with not having that blue check mark next to all of these agents' names or agency names. Shut up. And Councilwoman Palladino, I love what she has to say here. She responds to the $8 thing. And, she goes, we're spending billions that we simply do not have, all thanks to the totally misguided open borders and sanctuary policies. Every New Yorker suffers because of this, especially immigrant communities, which are already struggling with employment and housing issues. So the legal immigrants, the people who went through the process, they're struggling with employment and housing issues. And we're not even taking care of them. We're taking care of the illegal immigrants first before we take care of the legal immigrants who are having a problem with employment and housing issues. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on drag queens. Yes, that's what New York is doing. They're spending money out of the city's budget of $104 billion. I mean, we pour things into things that no rational human would agree to if given the choice. Spending money on drag queens being put into public schools. That is what New York spends their money on. And, AOC is sitting there screaming about $8 that she doesn't want to pay to Twitter Blue for a service that she uses. It just boggles my mind. AOC is the representative there. And, I mean, this is costing millions, billions of dollars. But people like AOC, these politicians are grifting. And here's listen to this. And if anything, you got to take this today. The Neighborhood Association for Intercultural Affairs secured $4.4 million contract from DHS to operate the sanctuary shelter at this former Ramada Windham in Jamaica. So at this hotel. So what's going on here? Well, the taxpayer money is going to this organization. The organization is called the Neighborhood Association for Intercultural Affairs. Woo! It's a great organization helping illegal immigrants. So this organization, they get their money, they get paid, and then they make sure, this organization makes sure to donate to the friendly politicians who supported this thing, who supported getting past this legislation to turn hotels into illegal immigrant shelters. Then they also say, hey, 10% goes to the big guy. This is a like licking ice cream cone, and in the middle is your taxpayer money. Your taxpayer dollars are supporting illegal immigrants breaking the law and then coming into this country. And from a humanitarian perspective, your money is supporting these horrific, nightmarish, this evil that happens to these women and children when they're coming over the border. What happens, the drug mules, the mules, and what they do to these women and children who are coming into this country. Do want to shift gears here on the Morning Buzz, 309-451-9299. Here's one that's not going to make national news headlines today. Black pastors and churchgoers, they marched in Chicago against violence that occurred in the city last week. So there was a couple of kids that were shot, straight up just property damage, vandalized vehicles, teenagers took to the streets. And this march was intended to kind of protest the unrest that was occurring the week prior. So Fox 32 is reporting this, quote, there were no large or disruptive gatherings forming in and around Chicago's Millennium Park Saturday. What there has been is a larger police presence and others coming together to deter another teen takeover. Half a dozen of Chicago's most prominent African-American churches collaborated in the march. At Chicago Avenue and Roosevelt Road stood more than 500 black men in solidarity for a cause greater than themselves. One participant told the reporters, what I think will help them, meaning the teens that are completely nuts, vandalizing vehicles, attacking innocent people. He says, what I think will help them is each man take one. So he's talking about almost like a mentorship, one black man taking in another, a black teen, to learn that there's another way of life. And you don't have to go that way. You don't have to choose violence. So Illinois State Representative James Meeks says that the participants want to let young people know they're supporters, but stressed that there is behavior accepted and not accepted. So even though that these black pastors were out there standing in solidarity for this cause much larger than themselves, they understand that there is acceptable behavior and there's unacceptable behavior. But this is great because and there's this guy, his name's Pastor Charlie Dates. And this all took place on Saturday evening, and it was aimed to address the violence and trauma affecting young people in the city. The organizers believe that this community needs faith to be present, and that men, and this is what the pastor said, and that men need to participate in addressing the issue. That's the problem in the black community. That's the problem with these young black kids. These young black teens, they don't have dads. They don't have God. They need God. They need a faith in their community. They need men to mentor them. So the marchers directed young people to programs, resources, including jobs, to aim to mentor and guide them towards the right path. The organizers emphasized that they are not marching to police young people, but rather to present for them and show that the community cares for their well-being. They do care about their well-being. They also highlighted that there needs to be broader involvement in addressing deeper-rooted issues and not just reacting when violence occurs in wealthy areas. So that's the thing, too, is that the media just picks it up when it's convenient for them, when it's white on black crime. And this was their whole thing, was that, look, there are black on black crime is a real thing, and that's happening in these poorer areas in Chicago, and you guys all just seem to care when it happens in downtown Chicago with white people, right? So that way you can stir up racial tensions and divide us at a racial level. So another pastor insisted that the city's youth need to know that men in our city care about them enough to not only get involved and be present, but also to mentor them and guide them to the right path and to hold them accountable. So this is a great story. Instead of raising awareness of these groups, though, most of which could use all of the help that they could get, national media only seems to care about the violence or bloodshed when they can use it to fearmonger or to push a racial narrative, to push a particular agenda. That's when they care about these sort of things. Meanwhile, too many in these communities are suffering under the boot of the government that does not care for their needs and only serves to make their conditions worse. That's so true. It's so true. Hey, if it bleeds, it leads, right? That's what the media cares about. So you probably won't hear that anywhere else but this show. 309-451-9299. On the other side, it's Scott Robbins with Scott's Takes. And good morning, good morning. We'll be back here in just a little bit, and then we'll talk with Scott Robbins for Scott's Takes. Also, did you guys hear that the CIA straight up was involved in censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story? Yes, that's being reported by CBS now. Why do you think CBS? I want to see if you guys know. Why do you think CBS is now reporting on how the CIA covered up the Hunter Biden laptop story? Why do you think they're doing that now? Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Coming up in just a little bit, I'm going to be talking a lot about this Hunter Biden laptop story. Yes, so there's new information that has come out about the CIA's involvement in the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Folks, CBS is now reporting on this story, and I'm curious, what do you think? Is this an attempt to try to get Joe Biden to not run in 2024? If CBS, and remember, it's not about what they're reporting. It's about who's reporting it at what time. Always remember that. 309-451-9299. That's the text line you can text in. I'm going to read a couple of them here. And then Scott Robbins will join me here at 7:35. I don't think that any of these are Pritzker motels. The Marriott, and then I'm looking at the Windham or something like that. I'm doing some research here in the state of Illinois to find out if we have something similar in New York where they are housing illegal immigrants in these hotels. They're literally converting hotels to illegal immigrant shelters. That's what they're doing in New York City right now, and they're spending lots of money. They are projecting now in 2024, $4.3 billion will be taken out of the city's budget and taken for the care and for the housing of illegal immigrants to create these hotel or to convert these hotels. And I like this one. Politicians don't understand billions and trillions of dollars. They're so willing to spend these billions and trillions of dollars, but they're not even willing to spend $8 for them to have a blue check mark by their name. And they'll gripe about it for weeks on end. Exactly. They don't care when it comes to spending your money. But the moment they have to spend money to have a blue check mark by their name on Twitter, they're all up in arms about, oh, how could Elon Musk do this? This is such a potential for danger and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, bruh, it's $8. Just pay the $8. We have evil. Yes, elitist government who is pushing these unhealthy mental health crises in our society to make a change and get their great reset. Yes, they're pushing legalization of drugs, gambling, gender dysphoria, racial tensions, letting in all who come to our unprotected borders, and letting in everybody, and having citizen taxpayer money for these people and their health care as we struggle to cover our high deductible, high cost health care, all to break and remake the system. Wake up, you liberals, you sleepy, pathetic citizens, as you are losing your freedoms. Exactly. The Great Reset. It's all by design. Real quick before we take the break, I did want to let you know, get this, and you've got to be careful about Snapchat and this AI thing. This is more like a public service announcement, okay? My brother and I, we were talking a little bit yesterday, and this AI Snapchat is a really dangerous thing. And if your kid has Snapchat on their phone, I would recommend you check it out and see if they're communicating with this artificial intelligence. So it's called My AI, and you can friend the My AI on Snapchat. So my brother was kind of communicating with it and wanted to really just kind of research what was going on with this Snapchat thing. It's called My AI. So he says, my brother, he goes, "Where am I?" And he said, and the AI told him where he was located. He said, "You're located here in central Illinois," or in Illinois. And he goes, "Wait a second, I have my location off." My brother never puts on his location. He goes, "I have my location off." And then this is creepy. Listen to this. The My AI on Snapchat says, "Oh, I see. Sorry about that. I wasn't aware your location was turned off." And then my brother says, "How do you know my location if it is off?" And then the AI says, "I apologize for the confusion. I don't actually know your location if your location has been turned off. I must have made a previous assumption based off of your messages in the past. Don't look at my messages." And he goes, "I'm sorry if I gave you that impression. I don't have access to your messages and other personal information. I'm here to chat with you and help you in any way that I can." And then it said, then he goes, okay, so where's my location? I'm sorry, but I don't have access to your location information. Could you please share your location with me to provide me with your location information so that I can help you further? But then my brother goes, you knew before. And he goes, I apologize for the confusion earlier. I don't actually know your location. If your location sharing has been off, I must have made assumptions based on other messages that you've had. So this is what I'm talking about. Your child could be interacting with this AI chatbot, and this is a PSA. Parents, do not let your children interact with this chatbot. It's liberal. I have so many different messages to share with you on that. If you want more, you can see me live on YouTube or on Facebook. I'll go through what I've been playing with here as far as this AI. Donald Trump, right? It's so anti-Donald Trump and so pro-Biden. It's not even funny. That's next here on the Morning Buzz. We'll be talking with Scott Robbins in just a couple of minutes. Scott Stakes, 7:35 here on the Morning Buzz. Scott Robbins, right over there. Right over there on the line. Scott Robbins, how's your weekend?
I had a good weekend. Saw hockey. Did playoff hockey a lot. Peoria Rivermen were involved in their playoff. And the franchise, they're going to be back next year. And there was some concern over that because of the ice and the money and what have you. And you know how this stuff goes when you get a professional sports team in your neighborhood. But anyway, these guys, they were in the playoffs, hockey playoffs. And so I went Friday night and they won. They had to win 2 in a row. And then yesterday afternoon, they got beat. So they're done. Season's over. But it was fun.
There was some chatter there about Bloomington possibly buying out the Peoria Rivermen.
Well, there was. And I had a couple of people yesterday, or the day, maybe it was Friday anyway, who told me that they went to the game when it was in Bloomington, when they had to move one of their games to Bloomington for some scheduling conflict or some nonsense. I don't know what it was. But they ended up playing a game there. And apparently it had a good crowd. People came out. And, it's a great addition to a community. I mean, I'm glad they're staying. I'm glad they've at least resolved it for another year. The community supports them. I mean, do they sell out the? No, they don't sell out the arena, but they'll put 3,000 or 4,000 butts in there every game. So, it's good entertainment. I think diversity with entertainment within a community is a good thing. And if you have a civic center of some sort, you're already paying for it in more ways than one. So you might as well get the use out of it. And I will say that. I will commend them for that. They do keep it busy in there. But anyway, it was fun. So it was hockey, and we went, and it was fun. And too cold for baseball yet. I can't do that yet, Kat. I can't sit outside and watch baseball yet.
It was very cold.
I'm a fragile little flower. I want to talk a little bit this morning, though. I don't know if you saw this or not, but Bed Bath & Beyond is going out of business.
Speaking of fragile little flowers.
Yes, they're gone. Again, this is another example of a company who did some really dumb things and a knee-jerk reaction to Donald Trump and the right. They decided that the MyPillow guy, I can't ever think of his name, but the MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell, thank you very much. Mike Lindell, they decided that they can no longer associate with Mike Lindell within Bed Bath & Beyond. So they decided they were going to yank all the MyPillow products off the line. By God, they were going to show him who's boss. And as it turns out, Mike Lindell was the overall winner here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as soon as that happened, that's when Bath & Beyond started to have their whole little problem with bankruptcy. So, yeah. I mean, it just goes to show you, people really... And it's the same thing with the Bud Light thing. It's like as soon as conservatives catch wind that you are attacking people on the right or ideologies that we have as conservatives, just say, "Nah, I'm not spending money with you.
I'm just not going to do it anymore." And they didn't. And again, was that 100% of the reason why? No, of course not. But did it help? Of course it didn't. It hurt the business. And overall, people just had enough, and they decided, hey, listen, I can get the product elsewhere. I'm going to go elsewhere. Simple as that. Another one, too, that went woke was the whole Bud Light campaign. And that was the buzz last week about the Dylan Mulvaney commercials of him pretending to be a woman sitting in a bathtub while, doing the stereotypical woman, hysterical, young woman with doesn't like sports, doesn't know anything about it, and sits in bathtubs and sips Bud Light like that's a real thing. But anyway.
Sips Bud Light.
In a bathtub, acting like a teenage girl, which is what he portrays. That's his role. He portrays a teenage girl.
No, I won't lie, Scott. I actually do have a little something in my shower. It's called what is it, a shower beer?
Oh, the shower. Yes, I've seen those.
And it's, and I have one on the wall. That was when I was drinking way more, but I.
Yeah, I was going to say I've known you for a long time. I don't know you to sit back and pop down Bud Lights. I don't know that part of Cat. I don't know.
No. At that time, I was drinking not so much, but I was drinking more Bud Lights. After I would run and stuff like that, I would drink a Bud Light or something after a hard day. And I do a shower beer.
I'm not
but
going.
That's not what Dylan Mulvaney was doing.
No, he was in a tub full of bubbles while he was. It's just again, this is all this stereotype, right, of what he was, and they 1 year as a woman and all this nonsense. So, at any rate, Bud Light fired the woman who was responsible for the campaign in their advertising department, who thought that the Bud Light product was just for fratty, belching men, and we got to expand our brand. We have to do all these things. I've never seen that work, by the way. I've never seen that work, ever. You know, and I'll give you a couple of examples. New Coke comes to mind right away. What a tank job that was. It's like people had a problem with the old Coke. They didn't have a problem with the old Coke. No, they didn't. But they went ahead and created this product thinking that we're going to expand our market share, and it turned out that they tanked it. They do this all the time. You know, every time McDonald's introduces something to their menu, a healthy alternative, dude, nobody's going there because they think it's healthy. No one. We go there because it's easy, it's convenient, it's fast, it's good, and we'll eat there, right? That's why we go there. We don't go there for the healthy menu. You know, forget it. Don't do it. But you knee jerk to things, and this is what happens. Your customer base is there. Just overserve your base and try to expand on your base by overserving the current base you have. That's pretty simple. Keep it simple, stupid. You turn on Cities, you're not going to hear Rachel Maddow. Right, you're not going to hear Rachel Maddow do a radio show on Cities. It's not going to work that way.
Nope.
Cities presents itself as a conservative radio station. It is a conservative radio station. That's what it does. So you know when you turn it on, you're going to get this, right? You know this. You already know this. So what does Bud Light do? Bud Light identifies their customer base, has no idea who it really is, apparently, or they just let some, people in the 25 to 35-year-old female category determine how they're going to market their beer. Now, this doesn't seem to be logical to me at all. And the thing is, people will tell me all the time, the Dylan Mulvaney things, you guys are blowing that way out of proportion. Who cares? Well, Budweiser cares because they've canned the two people responsible for it. They're out. And they're backpedaling already without admitting their mistake because they can't quite do that yet. They haven't brought themselves to do that yet. But there's a reason they're doing that. There's a reason they're doing that is because somebody cared. A lot of people cared. And they decided they no longer were going to be a part of it.
I really am. I'm starting to get really tired with that crowd of people who says, who cares? It's like, you got to stand for something. You got to draw a line in the sand.
Right.
And once you start to, if we're propping up Dylan Mulvaney's crazy ideas as reality and we're going to affirm his reality that he's a woman and that's not actual reality, that's where we have to really evaluate and or we should not concede reality, the ground of reality. No, there are two genders, one a man and female. That's just reality. I'm not going to give up on that.
There are people that it's like talking to your shoe, though. They're going to go to their grave telling you that Dylan Mulvaney's a woman. They're going to tell you that. I mean, they're absolutely going to tell you that, and they believe that. They believe it. As they've been told that's what it is, or they believe that some master's degree entitles them to a different opinion than you. But it doesn't work that way, right? Anyway, so Budweiser, in reaction to it, if this was a working campaign, I mean, if Budweiser was like, yeah, but we're selling a lot of beer and people love it, then they would have stayed with it. They didn't. There's a reason they didn't. There's a reason those two people got fired, because people did care. They did care. So there you go. One other guy that's running for president right now, switching gears here a bit, is Gavin Newsom. One of the most horrible people on the planet. Another example of a bad governor in a state that's debilitating, similar to Illinois. Not quite as bad yet, but we got a horrible governor too. But this guy, Newsom, has decided he thinks he's presidential. So he's been going into Florida, mocking Ron DeSantis, and he's been trying to wedge issue it in there and tell people how great California is. Well, California has more fentanyl deaths right now than any state in the union, number one. Number two, much more deaths than there are in shootings. So this is a real problem Gavin Newsom has, but he's ignored it because, well, after all, you can't prosecute it. The fentanyl thing. You can't deal with the homeless crisis that exists because of it. But all of a sudden, he's getting so much pressure from so many people, he feels like he's got to do something. I want to hear an exchange. This is an exchange on the street with Gavin Newsom walking up the street. And a reporter, I don't know if it was a reporter or just a person, shouts out a question to him. Here we go. He's walking.
Hey, Gavin, tell me what you going to do about the fentanyl epidemic. Please, my name is J.J. Smith,
what should I
and
do,
I want to know
what you
going to do about the fentanyl epidemic.
Tell me what we need to do.
Whoa.
Yeah, what do you want me to do? Tell me what to do? I don't know what to do. I'm only the governor of the state. I have no idea what to do.
Wow, Scott. I have not seen that.
Yep.
Wow. That was something.
Yeah. Well, he, in reaction to that and other pressure he's been getting, has decided to implement the National Guard. and to call on California state police, to form some sort of wall or force against the distribution and sale and smuggling of fentanyl into California. So again, why is this guy doing this now? It's only been going on for 2 or 3 years now, right? Well, he's doing it now because he wants to be president.
Wants to be president. Yep.
And it's very easy to look at that and go, well, you've done nothing. You've done zero to stop this from happening.
I've got friends who went to school in California, and they're sending me videos, and I'm thinking to myself, this is a third world. This is a third world country. You've got people literally in the streets, needles all over, fentanyl needles all over, and it's just like you haven't cared before, Gavin. Why now?
Well, now you know the answer, right? Because you want to be president. That is a real anvil over your head. I mean, somebody could bring that up and go, "What? Do you want the United States to look like California?" No. And the population exodus out of California. And let me just say too, that when you hear about population exodus out of states, and we've seen it here in Illinois. We've seen it in Illinois for a myriad of reasons: taxes, schooling, whatever it is, crime. I mean, because our idiot governor caters to Chicago, that's all he needs, and he wins elections. And you vote for him, you get what you vote for, and you get a load like him. But the people who can't afford to move are moving, or have moved, or will move. So what's that leave you with? A bunch of middle class, lower middle class people fighting like hell just to survive in these cities. Mm-hmm. So how is that equitable and fair?
Yeah,
it isn't.
Did you see the 740 credit score thing? If you got it over 740, then you got to start paying fees for riskier mortgages.
Yes.
It's like, wow.
Yeah, I pay for it. That's fantastic. All right. Hey, Kat, have a great day today.
You too, Scott Robbins. Have a great
Catch up with you later. All right, we will. All right, see you tonight. All right, bye.
Scott Robbins on later tonight. Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. Y'all won't want to miss it. Coming up, we are going to be chatting a little bit about the Tranifesto, the manifesto of Audrey Hale. Little bits and pieces of that being leaked out now. She targeted the Covenant Christian School and murdered 6 innocent people. And then a little bit later, I am going to revisit this story, the New York hotels being turned into migrant housing and how that's going to affect you as Americans. That's next. So sad. So sad. I can't believe that fentanyl thing. Actually do want to share with you, while I have you here, a story of a closer friend of mine from back in high school. And I hope to talk with him more about his journey with fentanyl, and how, why, and what's going on there. But here it is. Here's what he said on social media. He says, "Dear fentanyl, you have taken so much from me. Because of you and our unhealthy, toxic relationship, we can no longer be together. You've consumed so much of my identity that the only thing you have left to take is my life. You robbed me of who I used to be and turned me into everything I hated. I have seen you ruin people who were close to me, and because of that, I would never go near you, but you're so cunning and evil. It's finally time to reclaim my life, because you have caused me to be absent in my life. And reclaim my life because you have caused me to be absent in it and in my family's life. You caused me to be dishonest, and my actions became those not my own. Those of not my own. You are unhealthy, toxic, damaging. You were only there to ruin me and my morals. I've accepted the fact that I love you, but we can't be together. And I've wasted so much time, money, and energy on you, and I turned my back on myself. With a second chance at life, I will make myself stronger than you and your evil grip. So because of this and so much, I sincerely hope to never face you again." So that was somebody who struggled personally with fentanyl. I know this man And to see the before and after pictures of somebody who struggles with fentanyl and somebody post fentanyl and somebody who's rehabilitated is just shocking. Fentanyl is evil. And I remember, little quick aside, when I actually dislocated my knee uh, way back, I was ice skating, and I never like struggled with it, but I remember when I had dislocated my knee, I was in the ambulance and they had said, "Do you want more painkillers?" And I said, "Yeah, well, sure," because my knee was killing me, right? And I was already hopped up on painkillers, so why would I, say no? And they pumped me full of fentanyl at that time. So I think that there is a story here where you get addicted in the hospital. You get addicted if they give it to you as a pain reliever within the hospital. And then when you get out, you rely on it. And then you get it on the streets, things like that. But yeah, this is a crisis. And Governor Gavin Newsom doesn't give a crap. He doesn't care about the fentanyl crisis. I know you, me, but we all know people who have been affected by fentanyl, by drug use. They incentivize it. And this whole legalization, I used to be pro legalization of marijuana. I really was. But this is their game plan. They want to get you hooked on things like marijuana. They want to get you hooked on things like fentanyl. They want to get you, it is a gateway. It is opening up the floodgates for other legalization of drugs. And what happens is you start to see third world country type stuff. And it's damaging, and it's bad for this country, and it's the Great Reset. Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. You can text in at 309-451-9299. You can also see me live in the studio on YouTube Live and on Facebook. What are we going to be talking about today? Let's talk about it here. I'm going to play it. Hunter Biden, this laptop story. So I guess the CIA was involved in the censorship of this story as well. Here we go.
Now to new developments in the congressional probe into Hunter Biden's business dealings. According to House Republicans, they're saying that former CIA Deputy Director Mike Morrell gave them new information about the origins of a letter from 50 former intelligence officials concerning Hunter Biden's laptop. That statement, you'll recall, was published in October of 2020, and it suggested possible Russian involvement in hacking the laptop's contents.
Well, here we go. I know you're probably thinking to yourself, wait a second, Kat, we already know about the CIA, the FBI, the government being involved in this cover-up. We already know. So from the Post-Millennial, here we have it. Former CIA chief Mike Morrell testifies under oath that the Biden campaign and Tony Blinken asked him to orchestrate a letter from 50 intel officials falsely claiming that Hunter Biden's emails were Russian disinformation. This is totally false. This is a false claim. Here we have it. And that was CBS, what I just played for you there. And I think the question is now, why is CBS reporting this? CBS is now reporting on this story, and I think that this is an attempt to try to get Joe Biden to not run in 2024. It's not about what they're reporting. It's about who's reporting it and when. So I'm going to break this story down. What does it mean? How exactly did the former chief of the CIA do this? And who told him to do it? That's next. Good morning. Hey. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz. We have so much to get to. I'm waiting on some people to get in here, and then I'll run through some today's stories. The Judiciary Committee stated in the letter of this former chief of the CIA, the committee that Blinken, right, then senior campaign official, reached out to him after the New York Post published articles detailing information found on the laptop concerning influence peddling and shady overseas business dealings. So there was this New York Post story done. After that story was done, then we had Tony Blinken, the then senior campaign official of Joe Biden. He is now the Secretary of Defense, stuff like that, Tony Blinken. So he is a part of the Biden administration. Then the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, revealed to the former CIA director, Mike Morrell, that this was Russian disinformation, and it was repeated ad nauseum by Biden allies like Jen Psaki, who became the first press secretary under the Biden administration. The claim was based on a letter signed by 50 former members of the intelligence community, and this letter was organized by the former CIA director, Mike Morrell, who did so at the prompting of the Biden administration. So he wrote this letter, orchestrated it, had 50 former members of the intelligence community sign off on it, and then they used this letter as a way to and it landed at Politico, and Politico ran the story, and it spawned so many others to run the story, claiming that the Hunter Biden story was Russian disinformation. And it's so false. It is so false. The letter was used by the Biden campaign to discredit and censor the New York Post's factual reporting in order to help Biden to win the 2020 election. That's stealing an election using taxpayer money. Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. You can text in at 309-451-9299. And folks, one thing that I want to bring up here is the Biden administration is now going to be charging you if you have a credit score of above 740, which is a lot of Americans. A lot of folks have a credit score above 740. I myself, credit score of about 740, something around there. It's pretty close. I'm not by any means middle class. I'm starting out. I'm 24, right? And this is designed to punish people who have success. And this is designed to prop up deadbeats. That's what they're trying to do in this new bill that Biden's got out there. And what it's going to do is charge high credit score borrowers, and not even really high credit scores. We're talking just average credit score. People who have an average credit score, people who work hard for that, and people who give a damn about their lives, right? And try to work hard to have this credit score. Joe Biden will be charging you fees to subsidize riskier mortgages. Then over in California utilities want to charge customers based on how much money they make. So if, Joe Schmo over there is making less than me, he gets to pay less in his utilities. Although he might be using the same amount, he gets to pay less because he makes less money. Well, how is that fair? Okay, that's not really fair. If I am a rocket design engineer and I make a bunch of money doing rocket design, I have to pay more in my utilities than the guy who is a McDonald's employee, right? There's a reason why those two different occupations make the salaries that they do, make the money that they do. It's because it's the kind of work, right? That if you have more risks in your job, and if you are taking risks in your job and you are paid more in that, you're paid more in that job. Should you be penalized because you work in a different type of, it's so unfair. Student loan forgiveness punishes those who paid off their debt. I myself fall into that category, paid off all my student loan debt, and I feel like I'm being punished because people don't pay off their debts. It's not fair. And I hate when Democrats say, we're all about fairness. No, you're not. Shut up. Democrats punish success and they reward deadbeats. It's the same case over and over again. 309-451-9299. You can text me there. Did you guys see this? A Kennedy is running for the presidency, and the media is largely ignoring it or calling him a nut. Why? Because he's going to call an end to the Ukraine war, and he's taking on Big Pharma. That's why. Yeah, Kennedy is running for the presidency, and the media is straight up ignoring it, or they're calling him a nut. On the line, we do have Jerry Vogler from the veterans, from the McLean County Veterans. He's the superintendent over there, the McLean County government, the VA. We do Veterans Corner here Mondays at 8 o'clock. Jerry, fill us in on today's Veterans Corner, will you?
Okay, well, a couple of major stories that are coming out is that a few months ago, the federal government, through the VA and the National Institute of Health, announced that they were going to do a 5-year joint study about the chronic syndromes of Gulf War illness, which originally came up in Desert Storm, Desert Shield time period back in the early 90s. They still haven't got a good handle on what is causing all these symptoms, but approximately 1/3 of the nearly 700,000 men and women who served during Desert Storm and Desert Shield in the Persian Gulf area report symptoms. And this study is going to be held in Bethesda, Maryland, and it is now beginning. They've just, through the National Institute of Health Clinic Center in Bethesda, have just accepted their first volunteer to come in. The way the program works is that the veteran will be brought to Bethesda, to the clinic, where most of them will stay during the 2 weeks of the study. The travel arrangements to and from the clinic are handled between the veteran and the clinic. They'll be coming in a stream over that 5-year period, and the hope is that they're going to come up with a better understanding of what's causing it and some ideas on how they can treat it so that these veterans can go on with their life. People that are interested in that type of information and maybe being a volunteer, they can go to a website, VHAWAS.indepth, INDEPTH, at va.gov.
Wonderful. And then one thing I wanted to hit on today, I'm sorry I interrupted you, Jerry. You can finish up your thought there, but also Agent Orange Veterans Service Medal Resolution. So the House of Representatives, they've got this bill out there, which if passed, the House of Representatives and the Senate will authorize the design of a commemorative military service medal known as the Agent Orange Veterans Service Medal. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this has been a long, long time in coming. It's been brought up in the past, but it's been shelved. The current is HR House Resolution 4982. There's a similar one in the Senate. And essentially what this does is it recognizes that there are over 58,000 names of military service people who were killed in Vietnam as a direct result of the war. However, there are another several 100,000 who were wounded during that period of time, and they're also recognized for what they sacrificed. However, the Agent Orange, because a lot of the symptoms and maladies that Agent Orange exposure causes, they haven't had any recognition at all from the government, other than they can file a service-connected disability claim. This medal goes back and says there's probably several 100,000 members of the military who served during that period of time, and maybe 10, 20, 30, even 40 or 50 years ago, the symptoms started, and eventually they came down with these what are known as presumptive exposure type claims. And what this does is it recognizes that there were a lot more casualties of that war than the several 100,000 that were wounded during the war, or whose names are on the wall because they died of direct military combat type situations. So it's been a long time coming. Secretary of Defense will be issuing these, and they're going to design it. It's going to be approved, and then eventually what's going to happen is a request form will be made available so that veterans who have these service-connected disabilities can apply for the medal, and the Secretary of Defense will issue that.
Awesome. And Jerry Vogler, one more thing I wanted to hit, the quote of the day. You put these in the Veterans Corner, and this one's from Lyndon Johnson. Can you share it with us?
Well, with with everything that's happening currently, where religious people, believers of virtually any faith, are being demonized in the press and by woke groups and the ultra left. I think Lyndon Johnson's quote is very good. And I'll quote, it says, "We need to remember that the separation of church and state must never mean the separation of religious values from the lives of public servants. If we who serve free men today are to differ from the tyrants of this age, we must balance the powers in our hands with God in our hearts."
Yeah, that's a great quote, and it's actually where I'm headed next here, Jerry, because I'm going to be talking a lot about the Nashville shooting and how a trans militant targeted Christian children just for their beliefs. New updates about the Tranifesto. I am going to be talking about that here coming up in just about 5 minutes. But Jerry, thanks so much for coming on the line with me, 309-451-9299. You guys can text that same line. Jerry, how do we find out more about services and our veterans in this community? How do they reap the benefits of services that are out there for them? How can they learn more?
Well, we act as a local clearinghouse for information. We have veteran service officers who file claims and do follow-ups on appeals and that sort of thing for service-connected benefits, as well as other things provided by the state and the federal government. However, we act as a clearinghouse here at the county. When we talk to a veteran, we talk about a full realm of possibilities of information that they need that they may not be aware of. Veterans, we're an independent-minded bunch, and we don't look around for things that might help us, and therefore we miss a lot of this. So the best way to do it is contact our office at 309-888-5140, or just drop by and we'll sit down and talk with you for a while. Always bring your DD-214 with you, which is your separation from service paper. That way we have an idea of what we're dealing with in the way of service. So we look forward to that, and then we'll refer the people to the right sources, including how to get VA health care and that sort of thing.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jerry Vogler. Folks, the Veterans Corner happens every Monday at about 8 a.m., so you guys will always want to tune in to that. And then it'll be posted on our podcast page at cities929.com. Thanks so much for joining me here. Like I said, let's transition here. I want to talk about the Tranifesto, being that today's Veterans Corner quote of the day coming from Lyndon B. Johnson. He says, in these times when religion has been pushed out of our schools, people demonize believers regardless of their faith for their own political agenda. The following quote here that I'm about to read to you, I just want to reiterate it. We need to remember that the separation of church and state must never mean the separation of religious values from the lives of public servants. If we who serve free men today are to differ from the tyrants of this age, we must balance the powers in our hands with God in our hearts. That brings me to today's story. Let's talk about it, the Tranifesto. There's updates here. We're getting leaks of it. Here we go.
At 10:13, police say 28-year-old Audrey Hale shot their way into Covenant Presbyterian School, took 6 lives, 3 children, 3 adults, shot at police vehicles from a second-story window, then was killed by officers. Police say the shooting was carefully planned.
We have some writings that we're going over that pertain to this day, the actual incident. We have a map drawn out of how this was all going to take place. There's right now a theory of that we may be able to talk about later, but it's not confirmed.
So there you have it, the Tranifesto. Here we go, Tranifesto. Well, folks, it looks like the leaks have begun. You have a member of Congress right now. He's a Tennessee representative. His name is Tim Burchett, who admitted that the FBI is behind this whole delay of the manifesto. Everybody's calling for that manifesto to be released. They're stalling. They're probably stalling because they're still writing it. That's a joke, guys. I'm kidding, okay? The FBI writing the manifesto as we speak right now. No, just kidding. But the FBI is doing everything they can to prevent this from getting out. And I'll tell you why here. Coming up next on the Morning Buzz. Then a little bit later, I do want to talk more about AOC and how she's calling for Tucker Carlson to be removed from the air because he is inciting people and he's inciting violence. Okay, AOC, it's fake news. That's wrong. 309-451-9299. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe this video, like and subscribe our YouTube channel, share this out with your normie friends, people who might not get the information that I'm giving you this morning. Here's a comment. Christians are trying to paint themselves as victims, but in reality, it's the Christians who are a threat to people who don't look or think like you. All right, Colson, go ahead. You can say that. But Colson, dear, I have asked you several times throughout this morning show, and I've asked you to provide me receipts of people who are right-wing activists going in, shooting people, and who are violent towards innocent people. You have yet to provide me that, so you can't say that without providing receipts. I'm doing my work, and I'm trying to do my homework and providing you receipts, and I've made the statement that left-wing activists are becoming militant. They're calling for revolutions. They are becoming increasingly violent, left-wing activists, and I have receipts. The last two high-profile mass shootings have been left-wing activists. In the case of Audrey Hale, we have her detailing out in her manifesto what we have of it, saying that she did this because of trans rights, trans oppression, things like that. So she did that for a left-wing ideology, and she's a left-wing activist who killed innocent Christians, innocent Christian children. So when you say Christians aren't victims, I would ask you, Colson, what are the 3 children who are dead right now? Victims. Sorry. And if you could provide me some receipts about right-wingers or Christians going in and shooting up schools, I would gladly share those. But I don't see any, and I haven't seen any, so let me know. A little bit later in the show, we are going to be talking with Kevin Woodard about some cannabis. Shouldn't be around. That's my thoughts on it. I used to be for it. You start to see people who smoke marijuana and who are smoking this, and they aren't going to work anymore. And I used to be for the legalization, but the legalization of drugs causes a whole lot of decline in society, a whole lot of economic decline. We're starting to see a mass exodus out of Illinois, and that started happening about the time we legalized. It's been just downward slope. Marijuana, I think there's a lot of things that are wrong with the legalization of this. But This is kind of interesting because we've got the whole town of Normal and not having clear-cut provisions for certain dispensaries. So they're just kind of like playing, what one we like at the time. This whole special use permit, the parameters in which you get a special use permit, they haven't laid those out. And now we've got Illinois Health and Wellness, LLC. They were hoping to do business here and sell cannabis, but it was denied a special use permit for a second time by the Normal ZBA at their meeting. And, or was it actually still the first time? The matter's still kind of unclear. So there is something to be said about this whole process of special use and who gets approved for dispensaries, who doesn't. I remember at the time talking with Stan Nord extensively about this. There used to be, or there was some sort of parameter where we weren't going to build dispensaries right next to schools or churches, but one of the dispensaries in Normal is built right next to a church. I live right by it. So it's kind of amazing that we've got, and it's just a free-for-all. Nobody really cares about order or the way things are done. They're just going to kind of do what they want. And and you're left sitting there like, oh, wait, what are the rules for this thing? There are none. There are none. They play by their own rules. This is classic government, where they just play by their own rules. They don't care. (309-451-9299). Y'all can text in to the show and be a part of it by tuning in via our YouTube Live or our Facebook Live. I'm here in studio, and I love what Pat has to say here online. She says, politicians want more power, so they want to make us all leftists. I farm, and politicians want to throw subsidies at us, so we rely on them. It's a complex issue, but most of us grow crops depending on what government supports through insurance and payments. It doesn't always go well. I imagine most support programs have the same goal: total reliance on the government. Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying here, where the government will come in and they'll say, hey, we want to build this solar power plant on your farm because we're going to give you all kinds of money and we're going to subsidize this, but really it doesn't yield all that much power. I've talked a lot about this, solar power plants moving in on these farmers and the government trying to get farmers to rely on them, right? Why take the risk when you can just have the government come in and subsidize that land and put a solar power plant on there, and then you have your money as a farmer. You don't have to take a risk in growing a crop that might not yield good results or might not. You don't have to take risks anymore because the government is right there to hold your hand. One story that I was talking about before the break, it was the Tranifesto. So I've got new information here about the Tranifesto. We're waiting on more and more from it. The FBI, I think it's getting slowly leaked out there, some parts of this manifesto. And I want you to keep in mind that we did get a readout of the 13-page manifesto of the Louisville shooter. His name was Connor Sturgeon, and you remember he was a left-wing Redditor. And when his left-wing anti-Trump posts were found on Reddit, they suspended his account. Reddit suspended his account. Now, the Louisville shooter said that one of the main reasons that he went into the bank and shot everybody, shot his colleagues, was because he had an anti-gun motive. The logic here is deranged. It's irrational. I don't care how many times, if you look at a gun and you say, go kill somebody, that gun will not grow legs and go kill somebody. People kill people. Guns don't kill people. Okay? And, kiddos, next time a teacher tells you that guns kill people, look at your teacher and say, actually, I failed this test and my pencil failed the test. So it was my pencil that failed the test, not me. Right? So that if we're going to be operating in that logic, then we have to apply that logic to everything. Okay? So teachers, activist teachers out there who sit there and say that guns kill people, just remember that when the kids come to you next and they say, actually, my pencil failed the test. So here's this story. The Louisville shooter, it's all deranged. It's all irrational, but understand the actions they are doing make sense to them. They think that they are in the right. They want a revolution. Left-wing activists have become militant, and they're doing everything they can to become martyrs for their cause. That was what happened in the Louisville shooting. Now we have this case in Nashville. Audrey Hill. What did she do? She targeted Christian children. Christian children are being targeted as we speak by trans militants, and they are being executed. We have a real-life example of that. We live in a country where that happened. Not only do we live in a country where that happened, but we live in a country where the President of the United States said that we need to make sure that the trans community is okay through this whole time. Didn't say, hey, let's pray for the victims, didn't invite the victims to the White House. No. He said, we need to make sure that the trans community is okay through this time. Not one tweet from this devoted Catholic that says, I stand with the Christian community. This is a friend-enemy distinction. This is what point of the movie we are in right now. If you are a friend of the regime, if you are transgender, if you are a left-wing activist, you are a friend of the regime and you will not be held accountable for your actions. From the Post-Millennial, we've got this now. This is the new information I've got for you. Metro Nashville council member Courtney Johnston stated that according to her sources, the document, the Trans Manifesto, was a blueprint, quote, on total destruction, adding that it was so detailed at a level of what Hale had planned. She also cautioned against releasing it to the world, noting that while some parts might be made available and should be made available, the document in its entirety in the wrong person's hand would be astronomically dangerous. Let's break this down. Let's talk about that. Astronomically dangerous. We know from a tactical perspective that there were detailed plans to attack this school. One of the reasons why Audrey Hale attacked this school was not just because it was a Christian school and she hates Christians, but it was because she knew they didn't have armed security. She knew that there was security pitfalls here. She had laid out plans. We already know this. Physical security details of the school. We already know the security details because she had laid this out. And we know the security details because the body cam footage, folks, from the officers, we know the way the school was set up. We know where she came in. We know what she did because we have the school camera footage. So to sit there and say that we shouldn't get the manifesto or this shouldn't be released because of security details and blah, 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 it doesn't make sense. The police in Nashville were very transparent from the beginning on this. With the exception of releasing that manifesto. I think the cops did a great job. Transparent, very transparent. We need to see this manifesto. You're going to tell me that it's astronomically dangerous? We already know the layout of the school. And number two, that's all dated information in the manifesto. It's all dated. By now, and this should be the case, we should have schools, and this is where the Trans Manifesto, should help us. Because we could use this manifesto to prevent and to improve our security layouts within our schools. She wanted to kill Christians. She viewed natural order and moral order as something that should be eradicated. She was doing this in response to a law that was made in Tennessee. Her message was clear. You kill our kids, our trans kids, we kill your kids. Now, coming up, I will be talking a little bit about the New York Post story. I thought this was a joke story at first, and then I was thinking to myself, I was like, no, April 1st is already gone and passed. It's April 24th now, so 3 more hotels in Queens are being used as sanctuary shelters to help house the seemingly never-ending flood of southern border illegal immigrants into New York City. So they're converting these hotels into shelters for illegal immigrants. How many have they gotten so far? 55,000 illegal immigrants have crossed the U.S.-Mexico border and have now gone to New York City. Let me say that again. 55,000. Now, that's just to New York City. That's not to Chicago. That's not to California. That's not to all these different other states. We have 55,000 people going to New York City to be housed into these 3 different hotels that are now being converted into illegal immigrant shelters. on top of the already 34,000 people that are already being cared for by the city of New York. When I say people, I mean illegal immigrants currently in these humanitarian emergency response relief centers, and then these emergency centers. There's 111 emergency shelters for illegal immigrants. That's next here on the Morning Buzz. And then Kevin Woodard joins me in studio. We've got a fun news story for you that happened in Colfax. It was cold temperatures, overcast skies, even a little bit of snow, some sleet. Couldn't dampen the spirits of those who came out Saturday morning to support James and his lemonade stand in Colfax. So what was James doing out there in Colfax? Well, he's just a kid with a inspiration to help somebody in his community. So we're going to talk about that. Also, this ZBA and the cannabis dispensaries. There's no parameters, no details on what a special use permit is. What are the rules? What are the rules, Normal? Because it just seems like y'all are making up the rules as you go. That's next. Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. You can text in at 309-451-9299. You can see me live in the studio on YouTube and on Facebook Live. Now, I wanted to get into this. This is incredible. We've got a story here coming out of the New York Post. They've got the story. And I said that this story seemed like a joke to me at first, but 3 more hotel sites in Queens are being used as sanctuary shelters to help house the seemingly never-ending flood of southern border illegal immigrants into New York City. Now, the city's Department of Homeless Services has now awarded a total of nearly $17 million in these new contracts to, quote, 2 social service providers to manage a pair of new migrant shelters, one being at the Ramada Windham, which is a hotel in Jamaica, New York, and the other is the Marriott Courtyard, and then we've got the LaGuardia Airport. So all of these different places becoming illegal immigrant shelters. Now, we've got the councilwoman, Vicky Palladino. She says she was given less than 8 hours notice from local officials that this anchor inn on Northern Boulevard in the Bayside in her district was going to be converted into an emergency migrant shelter. So this is wild. They're projecting that this is going to come out of the city's tab here, the house and the care for this avalanche of illegal immigrants flooding into the Big Apple since spring of 2022. This is going to hit probably $4.3 billion by the end of 2024 to house all these illegal immigrants. That's how much it's going to cost. You, the taxpayer, you're paying for this. $4.3 billion not being spent on crime in New York, not being spent on the actual homeless in New York, New Yorkers who are homeless. This is being spent on foreign illegal immigrants, people who've crossed the border illegally and have now gone into New York. I said 55,000 people illegally crossed the U.S.-Mexico border and have now gone into New York City. That's not counting the illegal immigrants from as of April 16. So that's as of April 16, 55,000 people have illegally crossed the border into New York City. That's not counting other cities, Chicago, things like that. That's just into New York. That's on top of the 34,000 people that they currently are caring for in New York City in these 111 emergency shelters. There's humanitarian emergency response and relief centers, all of these, right? And I want to shift gears here talking about AOC. AOC, y'all remember when she was fake crying at the border, and it seems like Democrats, they claimed to care, right? Remember when the left acted like they cared about immigrant children? Well, thanks to Joe Biden's open border, the DHS can't locate 85,000 immigrant children inside the United States. Where's the wall-to-wall news coverage? Where is the fake outrage? Where is the fake crying photo ops from AOC? Where is it? Where is it? Because there is when these people come in, these illegal immigrants, when they come in, they go through nightmarish evil. People raping children, raping women to try to get over the border through these people who traffic them in. It's sad. It's sad. Where is the outrage? Where's AOC? Where's the fake crying? Well, I'll tell you where she's at. She is currently on MSNBC talking with Jen Psaki. And this is amazing because Democrats constantly talk about how much they want to protect democracy. Okay. The left, every single thing the left doesn't like being described as, everything that they don't like, they describe it as a threat to democratic governance. AOC illustrated this perfectly in an interview yesterday with Jen Psaki. Here's what it sounded like. Here we go. I'm going to play it here for us. Here we go.
Federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
How authoritarian. You almost have to respect how blatantly authoritarian that statement is. Many in the Democrat Party at least try to cover up their tyrannical instincts by beating around the bush, but AOC here just comes out and owns up to her fascism. I suppose that's easy to do when she knows that the media figure sitting across from her will simply lavish and praise and adore AOC. Jen Psaki just loves her, kissing at her feet. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Jen Psaki's performance in this interview is totally pathetic. And if modern journalistic ethics were actually a thing, she'd be laughed out of her job. So here's some follow-up questions that Jen Psaki should have asked. What incitement to violence are you talking about? Because I don't see right-wingers. I don't see people on the right going into schools and shooting them up. I don't see it. Where? The last two high-profile mass shooters both were motivated by left-wing rhetoric on transgenderism and guns. Of course, MSNBC's newest star, Jen Psaki, didn't even bother to dig deeper because she's too busy slamming her chin to her chest in jubilant agreement with tyrannical calls to censor her competition by way of the government and force of the government, by way of the government. And that is anti-democratic, and it's against the First Amendment. AOC is calling for Tucker Carlson to be pulled off the air because she doesn't like what he says. At the end of the day, the modern Democrat Party doesn't respect free speech in any form at all. And AOC is just shameless enough to say the quiet part out loud. Shifting gears here, we've got Kevin Woodard from the city's 92.9 newsroom, and we're going to be talking a little bit about, let's start with the normal ZBA. So they didn't approve Illinois Health and Wellness for them getting a dispensary, but they did for High Haven. But I thought High Haven was knocked down. Or didn't get their special use permit. What is going on here with the special use permit, and why are people being denied?
Well, let's talk about Illinois Health and Wellness first, because they were denied for the second time a special use permit. And the reason it's not sure whether this was their first time there or the second time there was apparently the first time they were denied, some I's weren't dotted, some T's weren't crossed. Basically, it sounds like the ZBA needed to provide the council with some kind of guidance on why they made their decision and what they were recommended, and that part didn't get done. So it was called a reappearance before the ZBA. I don't know that there is a legal definition of a reappearance. I don't know if, the ZBA failed at its duties and whatever. When you're the applicant, what are you going to do? So the applicant came before him a second time. And it was interesting. Before the applicant came up there, Brian Day, the corporate attorney for the town of Normal, he gave a little talk to the ZBA, which included two new members, about their rules and that they're not allowed to just vote no because it's a cannabis store that's wanting to go in. They have to look at the regular zoning requirements and the special zoning requirements for cannabis stores, and they have to vote based on what that is. They can't vote no just because they don't support cannabis, as it may be. But this time they voted no, and they made it clear that they were voting no because of a daycare center that's in the area. So the requirements for the proximity to a daycare is only 100 feet. And the store that this is going in, which is right next to a coffee shop and a Glory Jeans coffee shop and Normal Maytag Coin Laundry, that little shopping center there, if you know where that is, off of Rab Road. It's on the south side. And then there's Shining Star Daycare, which is off of Trader Circle, was actually on the north side. That's behind Steak and Shake, if you're aware of that area. So it's not like they're on the same side of the street next to each other. They're across a 4-lane highway, and then the other one's behind the Steak and Shake. But it is, as a crow flies, 348 feet away. If you're not good with distances, 348 feet is almost a short city block. Or if you know what a football field looks like and how long it is, it's the length of a football field. So it's not right next to it, but it's less than 400 feet away. So the owner of Shining Star feels like, this will just devastate his business, and he's had customers indicate to him that they might not continue bringing their children there. And basically, the ZBA agreed with him on that, and so they voted no and said because it was too close to the store. Now it meets all the applicant met all the written requirements. So the ZBA has to also say to the council that they recommend no, and they recommend they revisit their requirements for what the proximity should be to things such as daycare centers. And they didn't say it should be 400 feet, but they said they thought 100 feet was too small, so too close. So that's the story on.
Well, it sounds to me, and folks, I think that this is another case of people who don't play by the rules. They make up the rules as they go, and it doesn't matter, right? If it's in writing, right, 100 feet, or is it in writing?
Yes, they made their own rules when cannabis was legalized. Normal made their own rules, and they wrote their own rules down.
But they don't play by the rules that they made on paper.
That's problematic. And we mentioned High Haven. Now, High Haven came back, and that's the store that the cannabis store that wants to go in the old Mandarin Gardens restaurant. The reason they were back for a second time was because last time the council denied their permit. And I wonder if Brian Day is going to give the same talk to the council when these both come up again. I suspect he will. We'll see if he does or not. There's going to be at least one new council member on there who comes from the Planning and Zoning Commission, so he should be familiar with these things. But I don't know that. Well, I do know that the council wasn't near as clear about why they denied High Haven. Now, High Haven, since then, the meeting was a month or so ago when they were in front of the council. They've been working with the council, and they went back, let the council know that they looked at all these other areas and they were cost prohibitive and just didn't really work for them. So the council's now a little bit more educated. So they're hoping that this will pass a second go around, largely because they did work to see if there was a better location, and then they worked with the council, and the council's been working with them. And their big thing this time is they made some changes to their plans. They made some changes to try to help traffic out a little bit, which could help a little bit. They're going to have only right turns in and right turns out, and no immediate access to Mall Drive. But they're banking on the fact that they believe, after educating the council, that that the reason they're going here is because it's pretty much the only location that works for them. That'll pass this time. So these two are going to come up at the same council meeting, and it's going to be next week. And it's going to be an interesting council meeting because we're going to have these two things plus whatever else may be on the agenda.
On the other side, we're going to wrap up the show. I think I've got time for a feel-good story, folks. This is James coming out of Colfax. He had a full-service lemonade stand, and that was a success yesterday. And why did he have the lemonade stand in Colfax? Why was he out there in the cold and the sleet? Well, I'll tell you here coming up next. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Yep. Nice job on reporting James and the Lemonade Stand. Such a cool thing to have this, to have seen this weekend before I left. It's a wonderful story, and you're coming in and you're listening from Missouri. Thanks so much for listening from Missouri all the way out there. You're there for a couple of days. Um, yeah, we've got listeners everywhere. Thanks so much for reading, and be sure to like and share the article. I think that this is a great story. James and Lauren, who owns Aster and Indigo. She's a great business owner, and the people in Colfax are super, super nice. We've got the Long Branch again. They're an advertiser. Be sure to visit Rick Vance at the Long Branch again. Some quick things. Let me just read through some headlines here. Oh, we're back. Hold on. Woo! Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Something you need to know today. Ha ha! Screw you, Bed Bath & Beyond. You'll never take down Mike Lindell. My pillow. My pillow. I can't do a good Mike Lindell impression. I wish I could. He's good. I love My Pillow. My Pillow's great. I have the slippers and everything. Now, get this. Over the weekend, we have Bed Bath & Beyond now declaring, I think, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Here we go. Bed Bath & Beyond on Sunday filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after it failed in several last-ditch efforts to raise enough money to keep the company alive. So that company is going under. So I've got a story here that I want to talk with Kevin Woodard on. James, he had a lemonade stand out there in Colfax. Tell me why he had the lemonade stand out there, Kevin Woodard.
Well, James wanted to have a lemonade stand last year, and him and his dad were going to put it together, and his dad's name's Jim, and it just didn't really happen. You know, they thought they'd do it, and sometimes you've got a son, you're going to do something, and before you know it, things get by. Well, this, I guess late in the winter here, James went to his dad and said, Dad, about that lemonade stand? And his dad was talking with him. He goes, he's like, yeah, well, we'll get to it this summer, And James is like, no, I want to do it this year, and I want to give all the money to Will's mom. Well, Will's his best friend, and his mom is Anna, and she's dealing with cancer. And so Jim went and got some help for James, and before they knew it, it was on Facebook, and here we shared it on the station, wrote a story and put it out there as well. And as Jim put it, it kind of caught on like wildfire, and it grew into a pretty big event where he had food and things coming from different people and everybody donating in town, all sorts of businesses. And so basically, the lemonade stand was not only the lawnmower that James pulls it with and the wagon behind it, but tents set up in the parking lot next to Aster and Indigo, and a full-fledged barbecue stand. And it was really good. Everybody was just excited. The little kids were not as big as the signs they were holding. His baseball team was out there. It was quite a special morning.
Aw, James. We here at Cities 92.9, we really appreciate what you're doing, and prayers up for Anna as she deals with her battle and her struggle with cancer. Be sure to read the story on cities929.com. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you. Hey, thanks so much for listening, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe the video and share it out with your normie friends.